The sun's coming up, the drinks are hot, and now it's time for our first cup. Today, Bloody Dick. This episode contains graphic content. Your discretion is advised. So, I found a car just sitting on the beach earlier this week. I was walking along the path, looking out over the ocean, looking at the reflection of the moon, and then all of a sudden I just see two headlights staring right at me in the middle of Alamitos Beach. I posted a video about it. In it, you can hear my genuine reaction to walking up to this thing and finding that not only were the headlights on, but the interior lights were on. The car was on. Windows were broken, and the heater was still on. Like, whatever had happened recently. And you know, I thought that that was going to be the most interesting thing that happened on the beach that week. I was wrong. Absolutely wrong. Because you see, yesterday, I went out on the west side of the beach. There's a little like asphalt pier that you can walk out to the end of. I like it because you can be surrounded by water instead of just seeing water from the shore. And as is often the case, I walk down to the end of the pier and there's a couple of people sitting there talking or whatever. They've got sheets on. Say good morning to them. Right? Turn back around, walk halfway up, and sit down to watch the sunrise. A little bit later, the two figures in sheets walk past me, kind of wave. And then a little bit after that, one figure in a sheet ends up standing right behind me, kind of over my right shoulder. Okay. And he says, "Yeah, this is just God's beauty. It's just magnificent." I'm like, yeah, it is. Like, you know, I was out here, I was fighting with my husband. We were trying to cool off a little bit, you know, just, you know, man. I'm like, yeah. But this is beautiful. I'm like, yeah, it is. After he says beautiful, out of the corner of my eye, I see that like his sweatpants kind of drop down a bit and then come back up. He's like, oh man, I hope you didn't see anything. It's like, actually, I don't care if you did. At this point, I'm like, okay, cool. The plan starts to take shape in my head. I say to him, "Hey man, I'm not cruising. Besides, you got bigger problems to take care of right now." Sounds like. And he's like, "Oh yeah, man, especially because like mine's so small, but yours is big." I'm like, in my head, like I'm like, you know, points for being like witty and like, you know, like that redirect was actually a pretty interesting piece of rhetorical judo, but yeah, not my vibe. So I stand up and I'm thinking, man, I thought my shorts were dark enough and I thought it was dark enough, but this guy has been checking me out, seems like. Like, yeah, bro, you're right, but you don't want any part of it. And again, I'm not cruising. While I'm saying this, I'm sizing the dude up a little bit. He's maybe half a head shorter than me. He's kind of built, but I don't really think he's that much of a threat. He's too high, too loosely clothed to really be anything that's going to be a big deal. Doesn't look like he's got a weapon or anything. Whatever, just some horny dude on the beach. And he kind of like says something about my junk again. Like, oh man, like you're really hung. I'm like, yeah, you're right, bro. But again, like I'm not cruising, and besides, you don't want any of this. I'm like, what do you mean? And then I tell him the truth. And the truth is that, like, when I was 15 years old, it wasn't the first time that I had sex, but it was in the first couple of times that I had sex with my girlfriend. Right? I knew I had something, but I didn't know exactly what I was doing with it. Anyway, the second or third time, we finish up, and there's just blood everywhere. You know, in my head, I'm like, okay, so I know that, like, sometimes, like, this can happen, like, hymens can get broken, or something's going on, like, there's some blood, like, you know, thinking, okay, it's probably something with her. So we clean everything up, a little freaked out, you know, but, you know, whatever. We go about whatever else it is we're doing. And an hour later, I go to the bathroom to take a leak. I unzip my pants, and my underwear is full of blood. I'm like, what the hell's going on? And I look, and it's like, and turns out I've torn the base of my foreskin, like where it meets the glands, and it's just torn, and it's just bleeding, bright red everywhere. I'm like, brother, you don't want any of this. And he's looking at me. His eyes got a little bit big. I'm like, good. Maybe that got the point across. I start walking, and he walks behind me. He's like, oh man, that sounds like it sucked. That sounds terrible. I'm like, yeah, it was. He's like, man, I gotta pee. Like, you know if any of the bathrooms are open? I'm like, yeah, those over there are. So he starts walking towards them, and I'm walking the other direction. He says, oh, what are you going to go and do? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go finish my meditation and prayers. Have a good day. And he yells, have a good day back. Beach stories. I guess the one thing I want to get across here, though, is that with everything that's going on in the world, there's still a lot of interesting stuff that's happening out there. And you don't need to rely on bullshit or fantasy or speculation to find interesting things happening in the world, in your world. I mean, for fuck's sake, I found a car on the beach, and that that interaction I had with, I think Kareem was his name. You know, if you've had anything like that happen recently, I'd love to hear about it. Put it in the comments. But if you haven't had anything like that happen recently, you know, maybe it's time for you to just pick a favorite pier, walk out on it before dawn, get hit on by a thirsty gay guy, and then to ward him off, just tell him a story about your bloody dick. And please remember that no matter what you've heard or what I've said, death comes for us all, and a closed mouth never gets fed. Take care of yourselves. Find a little magic in the world, and we'll speak again soon.